Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show. And I wanted to make something abundantly clear before we get started here. Kenny and I do this because we love this, and we want to give Jets fans an outlet to, vent or to celebrate or to do whatever they do after a Jets game. This is not meant to be a distraction, though, from what's happening in the world right now. I want to recognize that there is serious, serious things happening as we speak, as Russia invades Ukraine. It's happening in the moment. If you're turning on news channels, there's reporters talking about bombs or explosions going off around them. It's scary stuff happening, and I do know, as a Manitoban, that we have a very strong Ukrainian community here in Winnipeg, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be affected by this. So I want to make abundantly clear right off the front. We understand that. We are not here to try and provide a distraction from that. We take that extremely seriously. We will continue on with what we're doing, though, with a mind towards what's happening, and hopes that this scary situation is going to find its way resolved before things get crazy out of control. Let's talk about the game. I'll get into that right before I bring in Ken. I wanted to say this. You've got the Dallas Stars, you've got the Winnipeg Jets going into this game. I could have told you what we were going to see in this game. You were going to see two teams with a ton of talent, two teams that have not approached what they're capable of this season on the ice compared to what they have on paper. Two teams with leadership groups that were going to show you how they lead their teams out of these situations. Two teams with a real strong realization of what it was going to take to get their teams into the playoffs. And none of that happened. None of that happened. This game was an absolute whiff in my mind on both sides of the ledger here. I take a look at what happened. There was not nearly enough energy in this game from either team. I take a look at two situations to me that, talk about the leadership on this team and where they're at, trying to lead the Winnipeg Jets out of this. We go to the play where Blake Wheeler gets his stick slashed out of his hand. It's a missed penalty, right? How does Wheeler respond? Well, he turns around and slashes the player 3 times and ends up getting a penalty as he gains his retribution. What do we know about hockey? We know that the refs, they don't always get the first call, but they're going to get the second one. Wheeler gave him an opportunity for the second, third, and fourth one, and he goes off. I don't think it cost the Winnipeg Jets, but it did cost the Jets in the way that it didn't cost them on the scoreboard, but it did limit a penalty or a power play for them. And then you go on the other side of the ice, the guy wearing the C, Jamie Benn for the Dallas Stars. And I know when I say this that Blake Wheeler scored and that Jamie Benn scored and had an assist as well. But Jamie Benn gets the high stick from Mark Scheifele and loses his stick, gets entirely out of play. To me, I didn't feel how hard that high stick was, but Jamie Benn looked to me like a player that was more interested in trying to draw a penalty than to fight through what had happened on the ice and look at the desperation of the situation to make sure he's where he needs to be to try and stop a goal. Out of that play, Mark Scheifele ends up scoring, and it's Jamie Benn who's not in the position to defend the shot. It's a wide open shot. Guys like Mark Scheifele are going to nail you in situations like that. I just take a look at the leadership groups of this team, and I think of moments like that in the middle of two teams who have no room for error. And it just strikes me as if you're looking for reasons why these teams aren't where either of them think they should be at this moment in the season, it's plays like that say something to me. Last thing I'll say on this before I bring in Ken, and I'll end with something that I texted Ken, but I find it just fascinating this season how the Winnipeg Jets, for the most part, seem to be in every game, whether it's a really good team they're playing against, like the Calgary Flames, who are on an absolute heater. They end up winning 10 straight over the Jets. Jets take them right down to the wire, allow a goal in the last minute of the game. And then you come to a team like the Dallas Stars, who are underachieving. And once again, the Jets are right there neck and neck with them, end up losing this game. I just don't understand how the Winnipeg Jets seem to find a way so often this season to be the second best team on the ice, because despite what I'm saying about the Dallas Stars, who I didn't think gave anywhere near the effort you would need from a team who is on the outside of the playoff picture looking in the way they are, I thought that the Winnipeg Jets, they were clearly the better team on this night. Almost doubled up in shots, took a way more shot attempts. I thought they had more chances. The Winnipeg Jets, quite frankly, from what we saw on the ice, were probably lucky to be in the position they were in. This is one of those nights where they get a point, and I know last game there was a bit of a debate on whether or not the Jets deserved a better fate against the Calgary Flames than they got. I thought they got the exact fate that they deserved in that game. I thought Calgary was the better team in that game. I don't think there was any doubt that the Dallas Stars were a better team in this game here tonight, despite the fact I don't think they played anywhere near their best or the level that they should have been playing. The Winnipeg Jets, in my mind, quite frankly, are lucky to come out of this game with a point. Not sure how many of you agree. Not sure if Kenny's going to agree, but best way to find out is to bring him in here and play the best entry music in the business. Here he comes, our main man, Ken Wiebe. Ken, my friend, change the scenery for you here this evening. Is it me, or do I detect a slight little bit of a tan there already in your time down under the sun?
No, great to be with you, Sean. Love to see your passion out of the gate. Glad you saved me a few shrimp cocktails at the buffet. But a nice start nonetheless. No, it was 50 degrees and raining here today, Sean, so no tan, but I did manage to get a walk in, got a few steps in before the rain poured down. But we discussed a lot, and yeah, I mean, for folks who didn't hear the other day, I'm down here. We're selling our rental property at the start of March here, so we'll have a bonus and see the Jets game live on Sunday at I guess it will be the last Jets Coyotes game at Gila River Arena, unless there are some changes in negotiations. But that is a story for another day. Certainly an interesting tilt here tonight. Like I said, I loved your passion coming right out of the gate here. I would say the Dallas Stars were definitely the better team. The shot attempts were 67-32 by my mathematics, and the high dangers were a lofty 17-10 in favor of Dallas in all situations, including 7-0 in the third period. So quick one for me. I mean, I didn't agree with Dave Lowry's take that the Jets carried the play. They certainly did not carry the play in the third period. The shot attempts were wildly in favor of the Stars, and sure, some of those were from the outside, but they certainly weren't all from the outside. To me, Sean, I think you would agree. I think the Jets sat back too much after taking the lead. I thought that they were too tentative. Their puck management wasn't great, and I mean, let's just get right into the tying goal. I mean, there's lots to dig into. There's three poor plays on the game tying goal. I know a lot of folks, and I get it. Mark Scheifele shows up in the frame late on a lot of goals. He got beat to the far post by Dennis Gurianov. But Nathan Beaulieu was not in the passing lane, and Nate Schmidt was in no man's land. He was he was spun around. He wanted to check somebody, but he never really got in position to check either player. That's a very good drop pass, and we talk about chemistry all the time, and people in Dallas have been ripping on Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn for a lot of this year, and for a lot of this year, there's been good reason for that. But these two guys come through and make an excellent play that set up the Gurianov goal with a very good entry and a drop pass. And Tyler Seguin owns that line and slap shot. Who owns the Chiefs? Tyler Seguin owns the Winnipeg Jets when it comes to offensive production. He's thrilled to see them every time that he has a chance to. And once again, he delivered both on the tying goal and the winning goal. So, like I said, Jets, you encapsulated it perfectly. There were stretches in this game where the Jets looked like they were going toe-to-toe, that they took it to their opponent, but there were other times when they just didn't have it. I mean, they were chasing the game and just weren't able to, get that next goal, get it to 3-1, pull away when they had a chance. I mean, this is another vintage Jets performance. You have a 1-0 lead, you have a power play, and a shorthanded goal, which, I mean, Neil Pionk was not being pressured, Sean, on that play. Of course, he wasn't trying to turn the puck over, and yes, it rolls off his stick to probably the most dangerous player on the ice, Rope Hintz. Jamie Benn delivers and puts it in the back of the net. I mean, but that can't happen. You know what really good teams do, Sean, in that situation? They bury their opponent. Mm-hmm. You don't let them back in the game with a shorthanded goal. So, I mean, that's another situation where the Jets just, like you said earlier, like not enough urgency. Like they just weren't, ferocious enough to pull away in that hockey game. And I'm not defending Mark Scheifele on that play. And Mark had a tough go defensively. Sean and I will dig into this quite a bit. Mark was involved offensively again, but defensively there were some warts that showed up in the hockey game. I'm not saying he didn't. But it wasn't only Mark Scheifele's fault on that play. There were 3 people that carried a piece of the blame on that play. And I would also say, if the 2 defensemen play that properly, Mark Scheifele doesn't have to win the race to the back post. And here's the other part. If you haven't watched Denis Gurianov, not very many guys are going to beat him to the far post, no matter how skilled and talented they are. So we'll dig into the Scheifele a little bit more later on.
Well, I'm just going to add on to that. You said you're not going to defend Scheifele in that play. I am going to defend Scheifele.
Actually, that's not. Yeah, right. I mean, he's the least at fault in that play.
Well, I don't think he's at fault at all. I mean, if you break it down, if anyone wants to go and take a still frame of that situation, let me just get. I'm just going to get that up off the screen. Anyone wants to go take a still frame of that situation? It's a pretty simple situation. The first 2 Stars players should be taken by the defenseman, and the trailer should be taken by Mark Scheifele. And that's how that play starts out. And then Nate Schmidt leaves the eventual goal scorer to go and double up on the puck carrier. For what reason? I don't know. I don't know why he did it, but because the trailer moves to that part of the ice, at that point, Mark Scheifele has no one else to go after but the guy who's at the far post, but he's late getting there. Not because of a lack of urgency to get there. He's late getting there because he was covering the high guy, and Nate Schmidt jumped over and took that man. And so Mark Scheifele can either stick with his man that he's supposed to stick with and double cover him and leave the other guy wide open on the back post, or he can go and try and catch him in the last minute. He doesn't. It looks terrible. I get it. Like you said, Ken, those plays where you've seen, and we've seen them before. I'm not excusing Mark Scheifele's defensive play on the entire year. We've seen plenty of plays where Mark Scheifele is late getting back into the frame as a goal is scored, and it will have to do with his effort or him being out of place. But on that play, that is Nate Schmidt heading to go take a man that is already taken, getting caught in no man's land. And if you see when that play is done, Nate Schmidt is right smack dab in the middle of the ice with no one around him. That's his error. That was not Mark Scheifele. So I will defend Mark Scheifele on that. He got put in a bad spot, and it looks bad. But if you know how that play is supposed to break down, the high man is his man, and that play gets taken away from him, and he's put in a situation where he needs to chase down the guy who's ahead of him on the ice, who he was never going to catch. That is not Mark Scheifele's fault.
So to me, that's just communication, right? There needs to be better communication between Schmidt and Scheifele on that play. I'm not, like I said, I'm not blaming him. It's still
a bad read by Schmidt.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, I think Beaulieu has to be in the passing lane there. But guess what? Nate Beaulieu hasn't played in a month. So that he's a slight hair late getting into the passing lane should not be a surprise. And again, I'm not laying this at the feet of him either, but I mean that's a play that can't happen in a tight game where the team is trying to win. Again, I think I mentioned this to you before. I mean, I'd be curious. I mean, again, you're not going to find out in a post-game effort where the Jets suffer a tough loss, but I'd be curious if Logan Stanley was a little bit more banged up after that game against Calgary. He blocked that shot from Eric Goodbranson in that arm or elbow area. And to me, I think that probably is the reason that Nathan Beaulieu draws in. Yes, we know that Nathan Beaulieu is a hard worker, but to me, I think that may have had more to do with his availability. But anyways, I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, we've talked about this before. There have been players that have passed Nate Beaulieu on the depth chart, but the Jets played him in a game that was basically a must-win for them. So they made the choice on that front.
I'm going to take care of one piece of business before we do.
Oh, yeah, you should. Yes.
Comments on this. Kenny's water bottle says, on a lighter note, I've come here to let you know the IC guys were crapping on the Sportsnet for not showing the overhead shot of the OT goal. And now that I've stirred things up, carry on. Tosk Live also says Sportsnet 360 channel for me in River Heights was such low quality, hard to watch, end up watching it on my phone. So one, I would have liked if the IC guys would have called me. I can explain exactly what happened here in tonight's game. You've seen this before. You've seen it on the TSN broadcast. Dennis and Kevin have been doing away games in in Canada Life Center. That's where they've been calling the games from because they're not traveling. So here's the deal. The way things have been going, Sportsnet, you'll notice that was a Sportsnet game, and I'm sitting right here in my home office, which you will notice. The way things have been going is we're not traveling people over the border because of the risk of a crew of people going down there and all getting COVID and getting caught. It would mean 14 days or 10 days or however many days it is now of putting people up in hotels. It's too big of a risk to take. So the issue that you're dealing with right now is all the games that you see the Jets play south of the border, whether they're TSN, and I think it's going to be changing lately because
TSN's on the road. They were on this trip. They were on Monday.
Okay, so they're back on the road. We're not back on the road yet. We will be back on the road, but the next game we don't have another game for, until the end of March with Buffalo. But you lose control of the broadcast. The cameras that you are getting are a feed from the local in-house broadcast. So what you were seeing tonight was the Dallas Stars local broadcast. So I'm as frustrated as anyone. I sure would have loved to have seen the overhead angle. I mean, I can't remember the last time we saw a game-deciding goal or didn't get to see a game-deciding goal replay. That seemed, I mean, whatever they were watching in the building, Ken, they should seem pretty darn sure about it because you could see Alexander Radulov was celebrating right off the bat and Tyler Seguin was celebrating. So there was a camera angle out there that showed something, and never mind that. We sure would have liked to have seen what the camera angle at ice level looked like to gauge
on the high
whether
stick.
or not it was a high stick or not, because to be honest, when they called it a goal, you noticed everyone else loitered around the ice for a while. I thought they were loitering because I was fully expecting it was going to be one of these, did it cross the line reviews? And yes, it did. And then the next review is, well, was it a high stick? And then it's one of those ones that not a goal could be called a goal and then gets reversed and not a goal again. That's what I was expecting, which I thought would have built a little bit of intrigue. We missed all that. And I get that, but you are talking about a broadcast that is typically done with me on the scene, with the guys calling the game on the scene, with cameramen on the scene, with producers, a director, people switching
stats,
stats guys, all down in the truck, putting on a broadcast. That's not happening here. What you are doing is you're seeing a broadcast being put on by the local people and people in Toronto stealing whatever they can from those feeds and trying to cobble together a broadcast out of that. I get it. I get people are frustrated. I'm not gonna say for a second that was the best, the example of the best ever broadcast that Sportsnet has put on. It's not, and it's not because there's no control over it. You're taking someone else's show and trying to morph it into your show. It's a tough deal. It's hard to do. Didn't necessarily work out tonight. I get that. There's just an explainer for everybody out there on what happened tonight and why things looked the way that they did.
And just a quick one. I mean, wasn't your initial reaction that it had to have been high sticking? I mean, based on the behind the net view, I mean, Hellebuyck poked it in the air twice, right?
Well, and here's what I think is interesting about that, Ken, is I wonder I wonder if because one of the other things that we're seeing in this kind of COVID world as it's going is maybe not as many camera angles as we
Sure.
typically see as broadcasts try to save money. Especially you'll see this. I think that there's a little bit less of a standard for the amount of cameras. Don't quote me on this, but I think there's less expectations on local shows of the amount of camera angles that you will get compared to national shows. I definitely know that when the playoffs are around, there's specific cameras you have to have everywhere just for so that you're not missing anything, right? You have to have them strategically placed. And I don't think you always have those for local shows. So what you may be seeing is Ken, that potentially, and I don't know this, but potentially the Jets couldn't challenge that play because just maybe there was not a definitive camera angle, an ice level camera angle to challenge it with.
Yeah, I think it's got to be booth review, right? So last minute of the
Right.
game and overtime is situation room regardless. Dave Lowry was asked about it by Murat Atesh of The Athletic, and Dave said, well, they looked at it and they ruled that it was a goal. But to your point, I mean, did they maybe not have to me, it was obviously very close. But to me, I thought just based on same thing, Hellebuyck banking it into the air. It's hard to imagine the puck was not over the line. But anyways, it obviously wasn't definitive, or the goal wouldn't have counted. So, and again, that's
you could see by the Stars' reactions, whatever in-house camera shot that they were running made it definitive because you could see it.
But that was over the line. No, the over the line part, yes, but not that it was high sticking. I mean, to me, whatever. Regardless. Yeah. Jets needed to bury their chances. They had some earlier on, but they didn't play well enough. I mean, to me, that's not if that's their best isn't good enough. I think that's maybe the best way that I can put it. But like you said, there were stretches again where they were very good, but they weren't good enough.
I'm not even going to give them that, Ken.
Oh no, there were. I mean, Kyle Connor. Point blank. I mean, Scheifele had 4 point blank chances in the first period and a half. Jake Ottinger was excellent in this game, even though he wasn't overworked. He said he was not taxing. But out of those 10 high danger chances, there were a couple of 10 bellers for me anyway in that game. But again, not enough generation from the Jets' top guys. Let's get into the thing about Kyle Connor right away here. Sorry, you're running the show, but I have some thoughts.
Go for it.
Oh, I saw that you were going to put it up, but you got it in the starred section there.
Oh, you want me to? Okay, all right. Here, you want this one in here?
Yes.
Would love to hear your thoughts as to why Wheeler starts an OT and not Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor is our leading goal scorer and point scorer. Before you get to that, I just wanted to. I hope I didn't pull it down too fast. Jeff Hamilton jumped in and said that Jeff Hamilton is down.
Oh, he's interested in coming.
Oh, there you go.
Well, send him the link. Yeah, send him the link.
But he was in the building and says it was definitive that was over the line. Anyways, let's get back to Kyle Connor. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so a quick one now. I mean, in general sense, I think yes. I mean, I think that the Jets should be looking at Dubois and Connor coming out of the gate on certain situations. There's no doubt about that. But to me, tonight was not a game where Kyle Connor had his skating legs. I thought, like I said, he had the one glorious chance from the high slot where he was uncovered, and the one-timer was stopped by Ottinger. I don't think that Kyle Connor had his explosiveness today on the ice, and I think that was probably one of the reasons why Dave Lowry did not go to him in the overtime. He had 22:40 and change, I think, before overtime hit. I think some of those. I mean, someone actually put I don't know if it was in here or in my timeline. Somebody mentioning. I mean, Kyle Connor's done such a fantastic job on the penalty kill, but those are taxing minutes, especially for the way he plays the game and his reads and his ability to pressure people. So, I mean, the whole reason why Paul Maurice took off Scheifele, Wheeler, and Kyle Connor off the penalty kill earlier on, I mean, a couple of years ago already, was because of how taxing those minutes were for guys who are already playing 20 to 22 plus minutes on the game itself. So, yeah, T. Will, thinking of you, man. Oh man, scary thing with his not car on fire, but the block heater going there. So, sorry. So that's my easy answer to why Kyle Connor was not on in this overtime. It's not a penalty for the turnover the other night. Those things happen. You shake them off. Kyle Connor is one of the most dangerous players in the NHL with the puck in his stick. I think you have to try to get him into the rotation in overtime. But to me, he looked a little bit gassed at times today, and that's probably why he didn't go on today. One quick one when we talk about overtime, and we'll get into this quickly with Jeff after he discusses the goal.
Yeah.
I mean, Jets are 3-9 in overtime, Sean. Last year
Yeah.
they were dominant with 3 forwards in overtime.
I wanted to bring that up. I was going to get into that. Let's save that for a longer conversation because I was going to say what happened. It used to be to me if the Jets could get it to overtime, they were getting
lights out
another point. And I used to think like it wasn't necessarily a good thing because I thought what that was. I mean, overtime means nothing in the playoffs, right? So if you end up
going 3-on-3 overtime
last year and we're exactly, and you're absolutely dominant in 3-on-3 overtime, and you earn like an extra 9 or 10 points on the year from that. Well, that's not going to help you in the playoffs. It doesn't mean anything in the playoffs. But boy, oh boy, I was thinking to myself last year, you couldn't beat that team in overtime. This year, they can't win in overtime. It's something else. Anyways, let's forget. Phyllis has it right here. I wish we had his entry music. We don't. But Phyllis says Hammer's in the house, and sure enough, here he comes live from American Airlines Arena.
The Big
Hammy's
D
down there. And so Hammy, start off one. I'll tell you this. You already hit the nail on the head when you went out earlier and had you ate at Pecan Lodge for the best Texas barbecue.
There you go.
Dallas. There's a place across. Did you have to wait in line to get in there, Hammy?
There was only four people ahead of me.
Yeah,
nice.
It was cold. Usually you got to wait outside. There's a trick I always do when I go there, especially if there's a group of people. If you got to get in line, there's a place right across the way that sells sliders, like burger sliders. And they've got one that they put strawberry jam on. This sounds disgusting. It's not. It is, and it's my big trick. I'll always, when I'm down there doing a game, I'll take the Sportsnet crew there. We'll get in line, and as we wait, I'll go across and get a bag of sliders and bring them over. They are A1. Next time you are there, I know it's hard to leave enough food because the Pecan Lodge feeds you well, but go get one of those strawberry jam sliders across the way at that place. Anyways, tell us what you saw in the building there because we didn't get to see it on the broadcast here.
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure about what you're referring to with the camera angles. I'd caught the part of the show where you mentioned that the Sportsnet was using the in-house kind of views.
We did not show the puck over the line.
Oh, it was over. It was over. Like, I mean, it was one of those. It was so over that if it was the other way around, we'd be spending this entire, like if it was the Jets who got this goal, like it would be a different narrative right now. But I mean, it was over the line there. You could see Morrissey's. I think it was Morrissey, right? His stick.
Yeah, Morrissey.
Was over. Like it was there. The puck was clearly over the line. I see some people asking about.
About the high stick.
About the high stick. And I think you addressed it, Kenny, with what Dave Lauer said after the game. Look, plays like that, the goals are reviewed within the overtime in the last minute. It was reviewed for a high stick. It was called.
But what did you see? What did you think on the angle you saw?
Did they show an angle, Hammy, that showed like an ice angle?
No, and I mean that's where it's the in-house bias, right? You see the puck over the line view very clearly, but they ain't redoing. They ain't showing the potential high stick, and like, you can go even earlier in the game. The high stick, I will say high stick from Scheifele on Ben in that goal,
right?
But right before his power play marker, they must have showed that. They must have showed that on the replays 10 times. Like it was just like it just showed Jamie Benn whipping back as if he just got shot like JFK over at Square. But
nice pull.
Thank you.
Grassy knoll pull.
The other thing too is interesting. And this is a bit off the game, but you know what? It's these. You made a comment, Sean, about like the broadcast and the camera angles and saving money. This was before COVID, man. What's happening is TV, they create these deals. They have a monopoly over the broadcast, whether it's Sportsnet National or TSN in the local regional. You've already bought into your deal and how many games you have, and then you scale back. It happens in the CFL. It happens in all these leagues where they scale back the camera angles. They don't invest more money and they pay way too much money for these games. They ultimately don't make the cash, and then what ends up hurting is the overall production. Now, I'm not taking away from the people who work for those companies. They work their cans off and everything. That's just a reality of the broadcasting situation in professional sports, not just the NHL. But as for that final goal, man, I mean, Morrissey finishes there, and this is a completely different post-game show. It's a completely different vibe. The Jets are back on track. They beat a team that they needed to, but that's hockey. I mean, this team, at the end of the day, it's just, when it rains, it pours, and the Jets just are not in a situation where they can afford to just have things like that happen. And so, I don't know, man. I mean, this is just a dejected locker room. You pile on from Monday. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck didn't even want to come out and talk after the game, against the Flames. He was livid and incensed by what he felt was, interference from Matthew Tkachuk, which, Kenny, I heard
he's right.
I don't think so, man. I mean, no, you want a guy like Matthew Tkachuk on your team.
Oh,
Connor
so do
Hellebuyck
I.
had more than enough time to stop, settle in and stop that puck. He just got beat. So anyway,
he fought through it tonight. We'll get to Hellebuyck. He was phenomenal. He fought through it tonight. Same thing as I said about Jamie Benn. Fight through it here. Like, what is this? Fight through it. You're fighting for your playoffs. There's no room to not fight through this kind of stuff. It's what's got to be done. Sorry, Hammy, keep going.
No, and just I'll continue at the buffet just a little bit longer. I'm with you, Sean. Sorry, Kenny. If Nate Smith wants to play goalie, go buy pads and be a goalie. You're protecting ice. You're not covering a man. Wide open there. It's like it was just a massive bit of communication. On Monday, the Jets had one glaring mistake. Now, I'm not suggesting that they were, great against Calgary, but they were certainly good against a really good team. And then tonight, it's just, 3 big mistakes, 3 goals in the back of their net. And, it's just a miscommunication. And you can tell that this team is holding their sticks extremely tight. Everything is magnified. No one's having any fun. Yeah. This is just a tough team to be around, and I imagine a tough locker room to sit in when, I'm not going to say puck luck's been against them. I'm a true believer in you create your own puck luck, you create your own chances. But this team, 1 point is no longer a silver lining. This team needed 2 against the team they're chasing, a team that has a game up on them that is now 5 points ahead of them, and
with a game in hand.
And what do you got to do? I mean, this team, this is you got to go into Colorado Friday night. You know what I mean? Like, Dallas did you a favor earlier this week and lost to the Arizona Coyotes. Okay, you need to finish this game. This is not. I mean, twice you led. And it doesn't get better for the Jets, man. I mean, I see some comments on here about booking golf. I'm telling you guys, I am cursed this trip. I show up in Calgary. Okay, I show up in Calgary where they had a Chinook for a few days. I get there and it's about as bad as Winnipeg. And I know no one back at home wants to, talk about the weather and how bad it is. I know it's horrendous in Winnipeg and I feel for you, but hear me out here. I get to Dallas. Yeah. When the Jets were here, 2 weeks ago? It was plus 27 degrees. It was -4 today. Okay? They having an ice storm tonight that the Jets aren't even flying out this evening.
Really?
They're not flying out. They're staying the night because the entire Fort Worth airport shut down flight. This city is not prepared to even de-ice planes.
Yeah.
They don't have the infrastructure to deal with these things. And so they need to literally call people in from other states. I was talking to my Uber driver today. She said in the past she's picked up people from North Carolina who were flown in to de-ice planes. So wild. it's just like it's just been a wild sequence here. But you know what, it is what it is. And like I said, things don't get any easier. And here's the other thing: the Jets are horrendous at the end of road trips. Horrendous. So anyone who thinks that the Arizona Coyotes are a free bingo card on Sunday afternoon, think again. This is not going to be an easy situation. And I see the violins. You bang on Kenny's water bottle. You're right. It's pathetic. But I cancel. I'm not. My flight was canceled. I'm not even flying out tomorrow. I'm going to be flying into Colorado. Boohoo. Friday. But I'll spend another day, and maybe I'll take you up on that offer, Sean, and get that jam buster of a slider.
Sorry, quick.
Go do it. Yeah. No, you go.
No, just a quick one on Schmidt, guys. And you know what happens when you haven't played with a guy all year long and your team is struggling? You try to do someone else's job, right? Is that not what happened on the play?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, my goodness, yes.
I think you're looking at a guy streaking, whether that was Mark Scheifele's guy prior to. You're not covering anybody in front of the net. You need to, the biggest threat is the guy closest to the net. And I'm with you, Kenny. I think there's a miscommunication there, right? There's a Sorry, you're about to say.
No, I just think he expected Beaulieu to get in the passing lane, and then he thought he was going to catch the other guy, and then he didn't get him. Neither guy got him.
I don't know if you saw it on the replays or if it was even in camera view, but I've never seen someone slash the glass so hard than what Mark Scheifele did. I mean, if that would decapitate somebody, how hard he went. He was pissed. You know what I mean? So, obviously he's pissed about the tying score. I'm not saying he's looking at Nate Schmidt or whatever, but you're right. There was a miscommunication there, but the reality is Nate Schmidt's got to get that guy. I mean, then the tap-in goal. Like, you're like, where are you? You know what I mean? Like, where? That's the net front. We talk about the offensive net front presence. Where the hell is the defensive net front presence? Where's boxing guys out? Those are the most dangerous guys. These guys make Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, who, to be clear, are having brutal seasons. Look,
except when they play Winnipeg. Except when they play
Winnipeg. Like, jeez.
Good intensity there. Good intensity.
I want to get into what we're talking about the direction the Jets are heading in. Someone called for it earlier on. I'm at home. I got plenty of headbands. I got like 7 of them down here in the room here. So let's make this as Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. So, guys, I don't know about you.
For the record, that's a lot better look than that Red Sox hat you've been wearing. Come on, now.
No kidding.
Get it together, man. Get it together.
Minutes in,
this
and
is the worst the headband has ever looked.
Welcome to the show. 36 minutes in.
So let's go in this direction, because I was surprised by this. I was taking a look at some, looking at some stats, doing some stuff today. And I was surprised because there was a feeling, and we did this when Sportsnet had one of the games last Monday and Wednesday. The Jets had been at the beginning of February or just at the end of January, they had about like a 9% chance of making the playoffs. They'd carved their way up with that little bit of a push that they had recently to about a 1-in-4 chance of making the playoffs. They were heading in the right direction. And so I don't know why, and I don't know if I was the only one who felt this way. I think other people did. I started hearing around the league, I was listening to I was watching a Colorado Avalanche game. And the guys in that had referred to the Jets as their wild card team, meaning like you can't rule those guys out. And the way they're playing, what we're seeing Mark Scheifele and those guys do lately, I don't know why it felt like, this Jets push was sticking with us. But I went and I looked at the last 10 games. There is not one single team above the Jets in the standings that doesn't have a better record than the Jets over the last 10 games. So if you take a look at this situation, Ken, we've been talking about what the Jets need to do, the pace that they need to keep, to potentially make a shot at the playoffs here. Well, after their first 5 games, after they came back from the All-Star break, it looked like they were achieving that pace. They were actually slightly ahead of that pace, but have completely fallen apart. Never mind not keeping the pace. They are falling behind. They have made their situation worse in the last 9 games coming back from the All-Star break than they had coming out of the All-Star break, which was a terrible, terrible situation. And I guess this is the question that I have at this stage with the trade deadline about 3 weeks out now. What would the Jets have to do at this stage over the next 3 weeks to not have to realize or go into that trade deadline as sellers? Because it's starting to look like it's starting to get to the point where even if they see what Columbus just did. Columbus just they went 8-2 in their last 10 games, and they're still way out of it, right? And they're kind of in a similar
guy on that. I think he used to play.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Don't worry, we'll get to that because I want to. Okay. But like they went 8-2 and are still a distance out of the playoffs. It's starting to be, Ken, if they had an 800 point percentage from in between now and the trade deadline, would that even be enough for them to look and say, realistically, we still should be making the playoffs here?
Buddy, check what I told you 2 weeks ago when it looked like they were in the playoffs. I told you they should be selling then already.
Man, I was going to say, I'm like, Kenny was all over it. Okay, say they miraculously get into a playoff position over here and somehow turn their game around, puck luck, everything. Do you really think this team is capable of winning or going
4 rounds
deep into the playoffs? And if so, what? I mean, you're just going to hope to be a Montreal Canadiens run? Like, I just, like, at what point, like, the reality is if they do inch their way into a playoff picture, they're going to need to get better, which means they need to have, find people at the deadline, find quality players, depth, whatever it might be at the deadline, and then you're mortgaging the future. So the reality is, even, if you even do get to that point, here's the other question, how many players want to come to Winnipeg now? How, like, the last couple of years used to be, this team's talented, guys will come or whatever. This team's in shambles. You think this is a team that if a guy wants to get traded and he's got a no trade list, he's willing to go to Winnipeg for a deep run? No chance. So I already think, I'm with you, Kenny. I think these guys are sellers regardless. Whether or not they'll be able to sell, we'll see.
And what they need to do, and sorry, I was talking about this with Huss earlier. Somebody had asked in the chat room. I lost track of it. It was a while back.
Yes,
I mentioned Owen Tippett as a guy that if I'm the Jets, I don't want 2 second-round picks. I want a 6'1", 207-pound former 10th overall pick in 2017, who is a right-handed shot, which the Jets have almost none of. So that's how you can. I mean, in some ways, Sean, it's buy and sell, but what you're buying are players that can help you today and tomorrow for guys who are probably going to be gone. So, like I said, wasn't disputing what you were saying, but there's no scenario where the Jets should be moving their first-round pick. And I think, to me, like I said before, I think you have to move Paul Stastny and Andrew Kopp. There's going to be interest on Kopp. Obviously, there's going to be lots of interest. I think Florida would be a team. I think the Jets may have to eat if the Jets eat half the salary, maybe you enhance the return. I mean, maybe the Detroit Red Wings want to trade for Andrew Kopp and sign him as one of their guys to try to get them to be a playoff team in years past.
I don't get that one. Why would they do that?
No, I understand. I'm with you. Just sign him instead. But I mean, if you don't want to have to outbid him, maybe you think you can convince him in the last 2.5 months to that your program is the one that he wants to be part of. I mean, you're just eliminating. I don't think you give up a humongous asset to do it, but I can understand the value. It's like an early rental, but I mean, there's no way they make that trade unless they think they can sign him, right? I mean, I'm not talking about tampering, but there's no way you don't make that deal unless you don't think you're going to sign him to the long-term deal. I mean, Boston will be a team that's interested.
Loveface doesn't want to be here anymore. Loveface does have
no. It's scary. It's scary. It's scary. And Achari's a guy that, I mean, again, I thought a couple of years ago that after he came off the great year in Boston, he'd be great for the Jets because he's a big, strong guy.
Yeah. He's exactly what they need.
Here's an interesting thought. So what was the big talk heading into this season was that the Jets had, retooled Summer of Chevy, which I think is off the game notes, mind you guys. If you notice, like, they used to have a Summer of Chevy. I think they got rid of that. I mean, that's just for reporters. Anyway, side note, is the narrative was, okay, who's in their final year or final years with the team? Blake Wheeler. Right, with the influence that he has on the team, say the team isn't quite in a playoff spot, but hovering around it and not in a bad situation, right? Still capable of, potentially making it, right? Needing a big run, but still like hovering there, just outside the playoff line. What happens if you deal Kopp? What happens if you deal Stastny? What's the mood in that locker room, particularly for 26? I think it's an interesting dynamic because, when there are some promises thrown out by management, and I just don't see this team. We'll see. Maybe I'll eat crow later on. I just don't see this team being major sellers for that reason.
No, and it's fair, Jeff, but they have to make themselves better for the future, right? So Kevin Cheveldayoff said flat out that he hasn't. If you haven't had negotiations yet with Stastny or Kopp, how do you think you're going to sign him in the next 3 to 4 weeks? Unless you're overpaying. Right,
I mean, agreed. I think all those aren't mutually exclusive.
No, fair, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all that stuff is true. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be thinking that way. I just believe this team. I think they will believe until the end, and I think you won't see if Kopp or if Kopp and Stastny, if they are in a position even a few points out of a playoff spot, not like 10, if they're double digits, I think it's, writings on the wall. But if they're even close or there's even a chance, I don't think that Cheveldayoff has the guts to do it.
Okay. Well, here I'll say this. I think that Turd Ferguson absolutely nailed this. Management kept their promises. The players dropped the ball. I think Hammy, it's a good question that you ask about Wheeler and how he would respond. But if Wheeler wanted those moves not to be made, he and the rest of this team had an opportunity to step up and force their GM's hand and convince their GM that they're a playoff team. They've done anything but. And I'll say this much. If there is concern, if there is one iota of Kevin Cheveldayoff that is held back from doing his job and doing what's best for the team because he's worried about how his captain's mood is going to be afterwards, then he's not fit for that job anymore.
Because Blake Wheeler hasn't had influence on the coach.
I agree with you. That's why I say it's a good question. You ask a good question, and it's something to be thought of. But I'm saying right now, if Kevin Cheveldayoff is putting the brakes on doing what he thinks is right for this team at any moment because he thinks that Blake Wheeler is going to be upset about it, he's not fit for the job. Step aside then. If you're not willing to do the hard things that need to be done for this team because you're worried about rocking the boat, my response to that is if Blake Wheeler isn't going to respond to that properly, then you go out in the next season and you get a coach who will get that player in line. Because I don't care if you're the captain of this team and you've been the guy that they've centered everything around and the center of the nucleus of this team. If you aren't getting on board with where this team needs to go, that's a problem. You either don't belong here.
Hey, Sean, to that point, I think that Kevin Cheveldayoff believes Dave Lowry is that guy. I think I think that Kevin Cheveldayoff believes that Dave Lowry is the guy to, I don't want to say put them in their place because it sounds kind of ridiculous, but kind of to 26 and 55, who had free reign over Paul Maurice. I'm just saying,
we haven't seen that. Like I know, and Ken and you and I have had this debate about the amount of ice time that they get, but this is the one thing. And Ken,
I see the concept. I'm not agreeing that it's working. I'm not agreeing that it's working. I'm just saying that I think that's what he believes.
What a coach needs to say. Tonight, Dave Lowry saying that he liked their game. I look at that game and I honestly think this was one of, considering the situation, this is one of the worst games the Winnipeg Jets had this year. I'm not saying that it was like, on the ice product was the worst, although it's probably in the bottom 10 of the season so far, the bottom quarter. But considering what was on the line tonight and what you want from that team, how could you as a coach come out and say to the media that you liked anything about what you saw in that game? Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like it, which is why I said I didn't agree with his point right off the beginning of the show.
I'll tell you why he doesn't.
Stand there's coaches that aren't willing to call a spade a spade.
Sean, you have a broken locker room, okay, that just lost the first 2 games of an important 4-game road trip. You think that they're going to take... You think that, and
he's not going to crack the whip there.
I'm not suggesting it's right or wrong. I'm just putting what I believe is him not wanting to add fuel to the fire of a locker room that's pissed off. And by saying, and so that they go, like, you think they're getting the message? They're not. That's the reality. And so I think Dave Lowry needs to tiptoe. If you went and had a beer with Dave Lowry right now, I think he'd tell you exactly what's wrong with this.
Agreed. But why can't
Sean, change your expectations, man. Change your expectations.
I would love that. Hey, I would love players.
So would I, but it's not happening.
And I'm not arguing for
why. Why not in this market? Why can they do it? Why can Barry Trotz do it in New York?
How often has he done it this year?
How many shows?
Why is Winnipeg a market where we cannot tell the truth about what's happening on the ice, or where coaches seem to be in a position where they refuse to walk out and say that wasn't good enough, like in front of the media? That was not good enough because it wasn't tonight. It's easy for Dave Lowry to come out and say that wasn't good enough tonight. We needed to be better. That's not points that we can be giving away.
I think this
coming
team
out
is
with 1 point is not enough.
This team's emotionally fragile. They can't take it. They can't take that. I think that's the
wow.
Think about it, man. We were on.
I think you're right, but if that's the case,
a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Blake Wheeler coming out, talking about how much adversity this team has faced this year. Like you wouldn't even know it, and it's just like every team deals with injuries, scheduling. Tough opponents. You're supposed to be a Stanley Cup contender. The accountability here is missing. Nobody comes out. Blake Wheeler finally has 3 great games that tilts his points into being kind of like a point per game player, and he tells you everybody that nothing's changed. Like, it's right there.
No, I know. Yeah, I don't know.
You just noticed the king comment for you. Now you're in your head.
No, I know exactly. I know what you're saying. I know where we're gonna go down. I know we only have 10 minutes left, and I wanted to spice this up. Ken, I'm gonna drop a little bit of a hand grenade into this conversation.
Oh, great! Sounds awesome. Yeah, good. Great.
So the Patrick Laine stuff that you brought up, Hammy. 12 goals in his last 10 games, 20 points, I think, in his last 10 games. I was looking at those numbers. Not only is he putting up points, but he's factored in on. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. I think he's factored in on 5 of the game-winning goals. He's either scored or assisted on 5 of the game-winning goals. Okay. And this I get this question because when I point that stuff out, I get all these people. Line mates. I get all these people.
Jacob Voracek is one.
I get all these people who jump into the comments and say to me, I still preferred Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's got a more complete game and all this kind of stuff. I get that. I've got time for that argument. Clearly, Pierre-Luc Dubois does stuff on the ice that Patrick Laine doesn't do. I said this when the trade happened. There was no way that Pierre-Luc Dubois was ever going to have the talent and the skill that Patrick Laine had. I think it's pretty clear at the stage. I know they're only 23 years old, but a lot would have to change for Pierre-Luc Dubois for him to ever be the scorer that Patrick Laine is and has been in the past and has been, quite frankly, since the moment he stepped onto NHL ice. I don't think that's an expectation you can have of him. I don't think it's fair, and it's okay for that trade to still be a good trade, even without him doing that. And Ken, the last thing I'll add to this is we've both said this. If they sign Pierre-Luc Dubois long-term, the Jets win the trade because they were going to lose Patrick Laine anyway at some point. But my response, because I know last season, I think you thought I was a little bit hard on Dubois. You definitely said that Dubois was going to come around, and you definitely, I don't want to say celebrated it, but you pointed it out when Pierre-Luc Dubois was good over this year, at the beginning of this year. Pierre-Luc Dubois has 1 assist or 1 point, in his last 6 games at a time where the Winnipeg Jets need that the most. Now, I take a look at tonight, and everyone's all over Wheeler. They've got their comments over Wheeler. Everyone's all over Scheifele, who had 2 points tonight. And I know there's a little bit of, and I'm going to steal a line from you, Ken. There's a little bit of Scheifele giveth and Scheifele taketh away. Great line. I love that line. We're going to use that one over and over again here. But come on, is it not problematic that at the time when the Winnipeg Jets need him the most, Pierre-Luc Dubois has not been making the difference? If he would have showed up and scored a goal in a game like tonight, that would have been the difference maker. Where has Pierre-Luc Dubois been, and is it acceptable what we've been seeing from him from an offensive standpoint over the last 6 games?
Well, I mean, I know he still has 21 goals and Laine has 18. Yes, I know he missed. No, nothing, buddy. No, nothing.
No, Patrick.
No, nothing. I know he missed time. 21 to 18 currently.
Patrick Laine has 1 less point than Pierre-Luc Dubois in 19 less games. So don't even try and compare apples to oranges.
What I'm telling you is he's
scoring at a less than a 0.75% per game pace. Patrick Laine is well over a point per game. They're not even close.
He's been fantastic, Sean.
Shutting that down.
Well, you can try to shut it down all you want, but what I'm saying is that for a guy who has previously had a career high of 27 to have 21 through 51 games, I don't think you had him down for 40. So
nope.
Did he need to do more offensively in this last stretch? Of course, but Pierre-Luc Dubois wasn't brought here to be a point-a-game player. I'm thrilled to see Patrick Laine playing great, but I'm also laughing because all of a sudden the narrative has changed from he has no one to play with. Now all of a sudden Jacob Voracek has found the fountain of youth. Boone Jenner's playing great. I mean, I've told you this from the beginning. Patrick Laine is a great player. Great players make the guys around them better. I don't care if he doesn't play with Austin Matthews or Mark Scheifele. So this is great. It's time that Patrick Laine had an impact on the game the way that he has, and I'm thrilled for him that he's been able to do it. He's gone through incredibly tough times this year, losing a parent, having an injury. Being traded wasn't easy. Leaving Winnipeg wasn't easy for him. He wanted to be the franchise icon here. But to me, this is like Solani. So the sooner people get over it, the better. This is exactly like Solani. He was on a meteor. He came in here, had 44 goals, and then it wasn't going to last forever, which is unfortunate for the media who loved being around Patrick Laine. It's unfortunate for the team because he was a dynamic, exciting player who could take over a game by himself and score at a pace that we have not really seen, with all due respect to Kyle Connor, who's one of the top goal scorers in the last 4 seasons. But if he wasn't going to be here, it's irrelevant what he does afterward. It's great for him, but Patrick Laine is not coming back here. So to me, I'm all for praising Patrick Laine and asking more of others.
Hold on. Stop everything right now. I'm not asking you to weigh in on was the trade a good trade. I'm asking you a very direct and specific question.
I already answered.
Pierre-Luc Dubois being in the last 6 games at the time of season where the Winnipeg Jets need him the most? Does it really mean that much if he's putting up career numbers where we're saying this guy is supposed to be a difference maker. And if you take a look at a Calgary game in which the Jets lost by 1 goal, tonight they lose by 1 goal in overtime, there's been plenty of opportunity for Pierre-Luc Dubois to be the difference maker that everyone is saying that he is. Where has that been? Has it been enough from Pierre-Luc Dubois, or are we excusing what's happened that he's gone quiet at the time of the season where the Jets need it most?
I mean, personally, Jeff, go ahead in a minute, but I think you're pointing the finger at the wrong guy. Even on the nights where he doesn't produce, he's involved in the game. I still think he's one of the most engaged players on the Winnipeg Jets. He's still getting scoring chances. And I see plenty of effort. I do agree his production needs to be enhanced, but I think you're barking up the wrong tree personally.
Yeah, I agree too. In a sense, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue that Pierre-Luc Dubois needs to be better. I mean, he can't go 6 games with 1 point or whatever it is. I mean, I look at this, and any of the analytics people out there, they might be too smart to watch this show. I'm not 100% sure, but if you look at the stats, I mean, he has been He was -2 tonight. He was -2 against Calgary. He was -1 against Edmonton, but he was +3 against Seattle, +2 against Minnie. Again, is on for goals and is for and against. So he's kind of been a mismatch. It also speaks to the fact that for some reason, this team can't have their top 2 lines clicking at the same time.
Exactly.
It's like if Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, it's like, okay, Blake and Mark, it's your turn now. Like you go figure it out. The reality is, and we talked about this, in a previous show, we've talked about this in the past as well, is that the Jets are making that trade again right now at this point. Points be damned. Because this trade to get Pierre-Luc Dubois is preparing for the exit of Mark Scheifele. And the reality is, it's great that you can have a tool on the wing who's unique. And you know what? You kind of hope that, because if you're going to get a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois, who at the time of the trade was viewed as a very good player, had his offseason last year, and then is performing to the way many people expect. I mean, this show's been showering Pierre-Luc Dubois with praise because he's been that good this season. He's in a spell at a bad time. So, of course he needs to be better. Of course you want him to be a more of an impact player, but this is a guy who the Jets want to, are going to sign long-term. Laine may or may not have re-signed with the Jets. The thing with Laine that I think is, is kind of frustrating for fans and even, for myself from a logistical a logic standpoint is you don't get a lottery pick and then trade him. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those weird situations. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not pointing the finger at Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, you can sit there and go, here's the other thing. You want to talk about give a damn? This guy gives a damn. Like Pierre-Luc Dubois comes after the game in Calgary and pretty much wears his heart on his sleeve about how frustrating. He's always does that, win or lose. I mean, this guy wants to win. Plus, he's 23 years old. Obviously, similar ages as Laine, but I'm with Kenny in that sense. I
wish I had the wake up mug right now for you, Sean. I would be holding it up. For you.
What? Why?
Self-inflicted wake up.
Why would you waste a perfectly good mug for that? And this is what I love when you two get together and you agree on a point. You think the fact that you agree with each other makes it that you're right. You guys couldn't be further from the truth. Here we are talking about a guy that everyone's saying is going to be Jeff, just hold on a second. A guy everyone is saying is going to be replacing Mark Scheifele and moving into this spot and all this kind of stuff. And he, like Mark Scheifele, and I've said this from the beginning, you move this guy, you're moving a guy who's a consistent point per game player. Pierre-Luc Dubois has not shown that he, at this stage, that he will ever reach that benchmark. And everyone sits here and talks about this idea that he's 23 years old. He's a couple months older than Patrick Laine is. Patrick Laine has been winning games with his offense for years. He's been doing it since he was 18 years old. I mean, unquestionably, he's been doing that.
Sean, like, what is this? Recent bias here? Like, what do you mean he's been winning games? Like he disappeared for long stretches. He's playing some of his best hockey.
For sure, but the Winnipeg Jets also in a lot of stretches down the I can tell you right now, because we did a bunch of the games down the stretch in 2018, he absolutely, when the Jets were at their hottest, was pushing things down the road for the Jets. It was we had some stat when we did a Carolina game. He'd like blown up for like 6 of their last 9 wins. You could trace to everything that he'd done in those games. As a 19-year-old, he was doing that. And I don't want to go down. Listen, I'm going to move off from this.
Patrick Laine, or that Pierre-Luc Dubois needs to play better over the last 6 games?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying, because we went down this road, and I don't want to get stuck on the Laine thing, but I will get stuck on this. If you're moving out a high-scoring guy like Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and people are having the conversation that you need to move Mark Scheifele to get out of the way for Pierre-Luc Dubois, should Pierre-Luc Dubois not at this stage be showing that when you need him most, he can not only go into the boards and rough guys up and play hard and try really hard every night and go out and earn a paycheck and put some points on the board? Like, I'll be honest, I hate that argument that you guys are giving, that he tries every night.
Whoa.
Come on.
Whoa.
Terrible.
Hey,
Terrible. Ken, go
Let's
find
move along
your
here.
wake-up
Move
cup.
along.
Go find your wake-up cup and turn it in your direction, because you have shamed yourself this evening.
Look, here, I'm not
Sean, if you think that Dubois
here's
isn't showing effort, you got to open your eyes, man.
I never said he's not showing effort. What I'm saying is, at this stage, you need more than effort. You need guys to produce.
Agreed. I'm 100% Sean's headband on that one. 100%.
Okay, sure, but here's the thing. What has all this production for Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele done for the winning for the Winnipeg Jets? Almost nothing. So directly producing.
They went on their little bit of a tear there. I mean, look.
Congratulations, 4-1-1. It's your best stretch of the year. You're not a playoff team if that's your best stretch.
Get a point tonight because of Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, undoubtedly.
Oh, and then great goal by.
You're not saying that Pierre-Luc Dubois tried really hard and that's why the Jets got 1 point tonight. No one is saying that. And if you go back at the recent success they have, if you're asking that question, the answer is the only success that the Jets have had as of late comes off the sticks of Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele.
Sorry, you're missing my point. I'm not ripping them for their production, but what I'm saying is that Pierre-Luc Dubois carried the Jets for a long stretch of time this year when that line wasn't going. When that line wasn't going.
I agree 100%. I'm asking where he's been lately, when they need it the most, when the Jets are trying to make a push, when their general manager has come out and said, I believe in this group, when you need, like Jeff said, all your lines going at the same time. Who's the guy who everyone is pinning the first line center hopes on for the future, and what's he doing right now to show that yes, this guy, you're in good hands with a guy who's going to score goals and win games for you down the stretch when you need it most. We're not seeing it lately. It's as simple as that.
I agree with you, man. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that it's a valid point that Pierre-Luc Dubois, a guy who this team wants to invest the future in, when the team's at its worst or when it's clawing to get into the playoffs, you want him to be a difference. I'm not denying that, and I'm not defending him by saying he cares. I'm just stating that it's just like, if you want to point fingers, yes, he needs to turn it around. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I want to address one comment on here. I'm just saying the Jets are preparing to lose Scheifele. I'm not saying that the Jets should trade Mark Scheifele. I've never said that. I've never believed that. I'm saying the reality is you have a centerman who is making far less than he believes his value is, and he's going to be a very expensive player. The reality is you're not being able to pay Pierre-Luc Dubois, who the Jets probably want to get for around Kyle Connor money. They'll make the argument that Kyle Connor is an elite top 10 winger in the league, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is not a top 20 center, arguably, in the NHL. But you're not going to be able to pay Mark Scheifele $10 million. So I don't want to see Mark Scheifele leave. I'm not saying that Mark Scheifele should get traded. I'm saying it's going to be very difficult for the Winnipeg Jets to keep him on his next deal. That's all.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And what I'm saying, one last thing. Yes, I agree that he needs to produce a little bit more, but for a team that is not hard enough to play against, Pierre-Luc Dubois has been one of the hardest players to play against for the Winnipeg Jets all year long. So I'm willing to give him a little bit of slack beyond this 6-game stretch.
Oh, worst time of the year to
Sean, it's not that the worst time of the year to disappear is in the playoffs, but the Jets have to get there. There's 30 games left, Sean.
At this stage,
you're expecting him to be perfect for. I mean, again, Laine had a tough stretch this year too. What if we point to his tough stretch at the start of the year? Before this hot streak started, Brad Larson flat out said publicly that Laine needs to be better. So congratulations to him for playing better, but Patrick had a tough 6-game stretch at times too, man. I mean, come on.
And Sean, there's a couple comments on here that I think I forget who mentioned it, but apathy is striking for the Jets fans. I think that is
Marshall, yeah.
Yeah, Marshall, yeah. Marshall's comment, that was a while ago, but I think that is probably one of the worst things is that teams are just not like, what we said from the beginning when the Jets got here, 11 years ago, whatever it is now.
Yep.
Is that Jets fans want a hard effort. Of course they want wins. Every fan base wants wins, but they want a consistent effort, and they're just not getting it. The other thing, and we haven't talked about, maybe it's for another show, but how hot should Kevin Cheveldayoff's seat be in this?
I've said this from the beginning. If the Jets miss the playoffs this year, there is no one whose feet that should lie at anyone's. No one's. Not Dave Lowry's. Not Mark Scheifele's, not Blake Wheeler's, not Josh Morrissey's, not Connor Hellebuyck's, not Pierre-Luc Dubois, not Kyle Connors, Kevin Cheveldayoff. Kevin Cheveldayoff put this team together, told the fan base for the last couple of years that all they needed, or that they were blown up by Dustin Byfuglien leaving, and that it was a blow that this team just couldn't recover from for 2 years. Came and told us last year that they were among the league's elite after they knocked off the Edmonton Oilers and sold that, and then came into this year having patched those holes, and now has lost his coach, had a chance to replace that coach and potentially change the culture and move things around, and has given a vote of confidence to this team that the team has not been rewarding that confidence. If they miss the playoffs this season, there is no one whose feet that should sit at other than Kevin Cheveldayoff, in my opinion. Either of you disagree?
No.
Jeff, you go ahead. We talked about it the other day already, so Jeff.
No, I mean, think about it. You've been here for more than a decade, and your team's getting worse. So I don't know how many survive, but, here's the thing. Do I think his seat should be hot? Do I think a lot of the blame should be placed at his feet? All these things? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to get leave? No. I just don't see the Jets doing it. And here's the reality. I think it's bananas. I'm finally convinced of it now, though, is that Paul Maurice actually quit his job. I couldn't fathom that being even something that's possible. I couldn't picture a coach quitting on his team, regardless of how you want to explain it. But the reality is he did. So the coach didn't get fired. Okay, for that inconsistency. Do you think they're blaming the GM? I just don't. I think the leash is extremely long, and I've said this from the beginning. I don't know if I've said it on the show. I don't know, because you have an owner in Mark Chipman who's very involved in the operations of this team, and I'm just wondering if he wants to create the wrinkle there. You have to bring in a guy that that works, and so I think there's a comfort level. And again, just what I think, not what I'm arguing. I think he's safe. Should he be? If the Jets don't make the playoffs, they should do a complete overhaul of the entire management and roster. You need to be looking, I'm not going to say necessarily rebuild. You have the tools here, but you need to get rid of, you need to clean out house a little bit here. And I mean, the way the Jets are trending, I don't see how they make the playoffs.
Oh, no doubt. Let's talk about Ken. I want you to hear your thoughts on Connor Hellebuyck, because I thought tonight he was absolutely phenomenal, and that's one of the worst parts about this is I think that one of the Jets' key players stood up tonight and put in an effort that was worthy of stealing his team 2 points on the evening, and that's one of the shames of this is you've got a guy capable of, almost single-handedly dragging you back into the playoffs. He gave a performance to do just that tonight, and that performance I thought was wasted by his teammates.
Oh, there's no doubt it was wasted. That was vintage Hellebuyck. I thought he was excellent. He was the best player on the ice for either team, and it was probably not that close, with all due respect to Seguin and Ben, who had a big impact on the game. I think that we saw Connor Hellebuyck at a podium show some real, genuine emotion. This has happened before. Hellebuyck was asked about basically in a polite way of saying, are the people in front of you doing enough? And there was a pregnant pause there, and he followed that up with, I don't want to speak too much about the team game. I think that's more of a coaching perspective. I do a lot of analyzing myself and making sure I'm giving my best effort. I know I'm dialing in on some details and I'm getting better this season. But he certainly didn't want to throw his team under the bus, but it was apparent that I think it was pretty apparent that he wanted more to be happening in front of him. Jeff, what did you think about that comment?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think that Connor Hellebuyck is the ultimate teammate. I don't think he would ever get to the point where he called his his teammates out. He knows that they're, he knows they're trying. It's pretty easy for us to say, this guy's not pulling his weight and this guy, whatever. He sees it day in and day out. He sees the work that these guys put into it. He sees, how their lives are, whatever. But I mean, like you said, I mean, this is a guy who put up another strong performance, gave the Jets an opportunity to win, and they couldn't get it done. I mean, if you look at all three goals, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck doesn't really have much of a shot on any of them. Yeah. I mean, and this whole idea, I don't know what was going on with the post-game comments here, guys, but this whole idea that they kept shots to the outside, I mean, I don't know. There was a couple long minute stretch, few minute stretches where, Hellebuyck was fighting through traffic to make saves. There wasn't, and yeah, some of the shots were, maybe outside, but they were getting through and someone had to stop them. And there's lots of net front presence by the Stars. I thought he had a great game tonight. 36 saves or whatever it was? I mean, he gave him an opportunity to win, and he's battling night in and night out. And we all know the workload that Connor Hellebuyck takes on. He's not a guy who's he'll play 82 games if you let him. It's just, I don't know, lost effort on the backs of a great performance by your goalie.
I'll say this. This is what worries me most about something like that. And you guys will know this from having played sports and playing hockey. But when you go out with the idea that you are going to, the right mindset, that you are going to play the game the right way and you are going to affect a positive outcome from your teammates, and you put this gargantuan effort in to do it, and you take a look around and you see, to the question, like you're talking about, Ken, those man, oh man, have the pregnant pauses by members of the Winnipeg Jets spoken volumes this season. But if you are one of these, players who go out and put in this gargantuan effort to try and turn things around for your team, and you take a look around and you see that effort is not matched by that player or that player or that player or that player or that player, or a night like tonight, pretty much almost every player on the team, that's hard to get over going forward, right? It's hard to be that guy who goes and shows up and puts everything he has into it and goes up the next game and ignores the fact that he was said, come on guys, let's go. And no one followed him into battle. You know what I mean? That gets to be really, really tough. So I'm interested to see how he is going to respond in the next game that they play. And maybe, maybe right there, maybe that's one of the reasons that this team has struggled with consistency this season, right? Because you go out and you see them all go out and put up an effort, and then you just never know who's going to show up in the next game. And if, Ken, if we're doing this show here, and if I come in and if I'm mailing it in, which I do quite often, let's be honest with ourselves.
No, you don't.
But on those nights,
man, you've been on fire tonight.
On those nights when you mail it in, if you can't trust your guy to have your back and be doing what he's supposed to be doing, it gets pretty hard for you to be fully invested. That's a good one. I saw that one earlier. And I guess I wonder if that may be the biggest. I wonder if trust is an issue for the Winnipeg Jets at this stage of the season, and maybe has been for a lot of the year. The trust that each player is going to be putting in the same effort as the last player. If you don't have that, you don't have much of anything. And I said it earlier, Ken, I'm still baffled how often the Winnipeg Jets find themselves in games. Like, the one thing we haven't seen from this team is that they've thrown in the towel and now get waxed by 3 or 4 goals every night, right? That is not one thing, something that we see from this Winnipeg Jets team. They're in every game, but I'll end the show the same way. I'll end the show the same.
Important call coming in.
I'll end the show the same way that I started it. I don't understand how the Winnipeg Jets are in almost every game this season, and yet somehow they consistently find a way to be the second best team on the ice every night. It baffles me. I don't understand it, but maybe that has something to do with it. Any last thoughts, guys?
I think it's a lack of confidence. I mean, I think we're back to where the Jets were a few years ago, where, you know, when something bad happens, they don't know how to deal with it. And when confidence lacks, you start looking up and down the bench, wondering who's going to take over. The Jets have weapons. That's, I think, the most frustrating and disappointing part of this team, is that they have enough guys that could, you know, have the potential to, if not take over a game, impact one significantly. It just looks a lot of the, like, are you going to do it? Waiting for it kind of thing. And I mean, that's a very simplified version of their struggles here, but it's not getting to a point where guys are going out and taking it. You know what I mean? And maybe, and when you've been the second best team in a majority of your games, or you've had stretches where things haven't gone your way, there's a tendency to kind of feel that inner pressure and takes away from, you know, pushing the play. And I think we're seeing that with the Jets tonight, for instance. I mean, you know, they go up, they get the start finally. They score the first goal for the first time in 7 games. And then, you know, there's stretches where the Stars just take it to them. You know, like, they don't get better after goals. Like, it's like the momentum shifts for the other team. They don't build off their stuff. So, you know, I'm not going to psychoanalyze the team. I'm not qualified for it. But I just feel there's a massive confidence or lack thereof that's brewing right now for a club that desperately needs to find, you know, that confidence to win games.
Yeah, I totally disagree with Rob Mahoney's point there. Some people can get fired up and be mad about it, and others are going to try to bring a ray of sunshine when things aren't going well. I don't think that is a factor whatsoever. You can't.
Well, not just that. I think they are a miserable group right now.
I agree, and they can be, and I don't think that has anything to do with someone. Nate Schmidt's not cracking jokes when they're in the middle of a tough time, and
he was post game Calgary. You know, he wasn't cracking jokes.
No, he was pissed
and
off.
No one's saying, I don't know what the point of that comment is, but no one's saying that the Jets should be pissed off and mad. They should play better.
They should exactly do something about it. Don't if you want to change the narrative,
actions speak louder than words, right?
And that's my point for Sean about Dave Lowry. I mean, Dave Lowry's a first-time head coach. First-time head coaches aren't standing up at the podium firing out flaming hot takes towards their team.
It's not a flaming hot
buddy
take if you're just saying it as it is.
Sure, but and the other thing too, I mean, it just
hey, I'll say this.
You got a buddy there on the edge of a wake up, Sean.
I got
a little gateway drug to wake up.
Exactly. You start with buddy, and then you hit rock bottom with the wake up. I'll tell you.
This is the thing, and just building on what you were saying. I mean, this is very simple. There was a time not long ago when the Winnipeg Jets took pride in not losing consecutive games. They've won consecutive games one time in 2022. So that is the difference between being a bubble team and being more than just a contender, but being one of the more elite teams. This team is not an elite team right now. They have some elite tools, but they are lacking the je ne sais quoi that teams need in order to become real contenders. And whether that's personnel or whatever else, that remains to be determined. Some people, and again, I understand the apathy part, but here's the thing for me. This next stretch of games is going to be absolutely fascinating in terms of the determination of what direction this organization goes on a number of levels, including its roster. And that doesn't mean, I mean, Jeff, like you said, there has to be a complete looking at everything, every single thing. You got to be looking at coaching, general manager, scouting, pretty much everything is going to be under review, except what Mark Morrison and his staff have been doing with the Manitoba Moose. That we know has been exceptional given the circumstances. Everything else, the Jets need to be looking at very hard into the mirror and decide on what direction they're going to decide to be going moving forward. And that's why these games matter. I understand people that want to check out, people that think, oh, playoffs are a pipe dream, so forget it. Now you're going to find out who really cares and who wants to be part of the solution to me. And that's a big, big thing for this group going forward.
This is a really good comment here from Cranley saying playing to just hang around in games and maybe catch a break and or take chances in OT. That's the Jets' ceiling this year. This is bang on.
What game was it the other day? It was a home game. Minnesota. When this team started saying they needed to, quote unquote, match the intensity of the Wild.
Yeah.
You know, like what happened to playing or focusing on your own game? That was the narrative for the first half of the season.
Yeah, they don't dictate the pace well enough.
No, the terms.
Right.
And that probably explains why they're the second best team, because if they're not dictating the terms and they're just playing the other team's game and end up being, I mean, I'll be honest, I think there's a number of games this year they won where they were the second best team on the ice and, you know, got their way out of that game with their scoring the way they did it. I just want to quickly touch on what you've been, what you were saying about kind of the entire organization, other than what the Manitoba Moose have done under review. I couldn't agree with that more. And the one thing that I would say about this is, I do think that Mark Chipman and I think Paul Maurice, when he was here, and Kevin Cheveldayoff have walked in lockstep for a really, really long time. And what that means is that, like Kevin Cheveldayoff has said right now, I think that Mark Chipman has a very strong belief in the core and this team that they've put together. And that's fine. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are question why this team isn't as good as they should be. But I think it's time for Mark Chipman to be asking himself this question. If he believes as strongly as he does in the core of this team, he needs to wonder why this team that has had this core in place since 2016, 2017 has had the lack of results it's had. And at this stage, if he truly believes in it, as time is ticking down on, the tenure of Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler and Connor Hellebuyck here, if he truly believes in it, he's got to kind of look at the idea of what can be done or handing the keys to someone who can look at this a different way and maybe get different results. Because I'll say this, the more I look at this, the more I think we shouldn't be surprised that the Jets are in the spot they're in right now. The only two teams lower than them in the standings going into the playoffs last year were the St. Louis Blues and the Montreal Canadiens. The year before that, they were right on the cusp of missing the playoffs. I mean, if the Jets miss the playoffs this season, they're basically just a slight bit lower than where they were in the standings the last couple of years. And again, the only difference in these teams and those teams is the addition of Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. So what we've seen the last couple of years, or what we've been told, is this team isn't succeeding because of this hole that they had. And we've bought into or I think a lot of people have bought into the premise that hole on defense has entirely gutted this team. Well, maybe pointing towards that hole and saying that's the problem has had everyone, misdirected and looking away from what the real problems on this team are.
Team management, including Mark Chipman, has coddled this team since they got here from Atlanta in 2011. They allowed the culture to, breed itself. Everyone talks about bringing in a new GM, a new head coach. How many head coaches, how many Barry Trotz, for instance? Everyone talks about Barry Trotz coming here, or anybody else, of that high caliber. How many coaches?
Sorry, I switched it on you.
How many head coaches and GMs want an owner who's that involved? Not a lot. You know what I mean? And let's face it here. I mean, Mark Chipman is involved. He's involved with players. He's involved with decisions. I mean, even when Mark Scheifele got drafted, Kevin Cheveldayoff gave credit to Mark Chipman because they had to ask Mark Chipman permission to pick Mark Scheifele, because he wasn't viewed as in that position for 7th overall. I mean, what GM who wants to put his finger, like, how many times have you seen any other owner that talks about how, we're just going to hand this over to the guys and let them do their thing? That doesn't exist in Winnipeg. And guess what? It's a small community. Anyone who coaches in this league for a long enough time knows that. Now, I'm not saying, I'm just saying it's a tough situation to acquire a guy who might want to have everything, have his plan or his vision. So it's, and so I think it's tough. And, that's kind of the reality of the situation in Winnipeg. And, I don't know, man. I think it's a tough situation. I think, they made their own bed in a lot of ways, and now they got to figure it out. I mean, that's where they sit.
Ken, final thoughts.
Just a quick one. I think that there was some burnout. Mental health could be burnout. Paul Maurice could be back, but it won't be with the Jets as a head coach. I think we're going to see Paul Maurice back coaching, whether it's next year or the year after. But just wanted to weigh in on that quickly. One other quick thing. I mean, we've talked about all the topics that are important here, but right, like you said off the top, we're thinking of our friend Izzy from the Washington Post, who will be covering what's going down in the Ukraine here, and has posted photos from there. And obviously, it's an incredibly scary time. Our thoughts are with her. She's a great individual, and human being who used to cover the Washington Capitals and is now doing the more important things while we play in the toy department. So thoughts with her. And then obviously, Sean, just for my schedule, the Jets mailbag for February is open. You can hit me up on Twitter, DM, or email me at kenjr@shaw.ca. And Sean has a quick update on our schedule, which is caused by my being in Arizona here. So we have some news on the weekly long-form edition.
Yeah, so Hef Jamilton said, don't forget about Kenny and Renny tomorrow with Sheldon and Kennedy. That's not happening. The next 2 Thursdays aren't happening, but the following Thursday after that, which I believe is Thursday, March the 10th. Kev, I was talking with Sheldon's assistant today. We've got it locked down, so everything's taken care of. We will return with the long-form show.
Sean,
not tomorrow, not Thursday, not the following Thursday, but the Thursday after that. And I just wanted to throw this out here as well and get people kind of back on this. We've got merch at our store. If you haven't checked it out, I got to bring down the wake up cup. I got to start using that. You could have used it tonight. Both you two could have used it tonight. I've got one upstairs.
Yeah, look who's talking.
Leave it right down here. Buddy. Anyways, if you want to check out our stuff, we got great stuff. We got new Kenny and Renny shirts with just the logo. Jeff Hamilton's got one. We've got your Sean's headband shirt. We've got your Kenny's wake up shirt. We've got Kenny and Renny water bottles. We've got the Kenny and Renny cups. We're working on hats and headbands coming down the pipe here. It would mean the world to us if you went and supported us with that kind of stuff. It's a lot lower price points. Oh, yeah, and exactly. I'll be on Winnipeg Sports Talk tomorrow, joining Husk. Clearly, there's going to be lots to talk about.
I'm on Friday.
In that situation, Jeff is. We saw.
Way to complete. Way to complete the hat trick. I was on today. Yeah. Like that. That's a pretty good natural hat trick for guests. Wouldn't you say?
There you go. 1, 2, 3.
Sean, I know you want to wrap up here, and it's all good, but we never even got into Ville Heinola or me asking Dave Lowry if Svechnikov was in the doghouse. Is that?
Oh man.
Hey, we can touch on that later.
Well, let's get it done. Oh, let's get it done. Go for it, and then I'll wrap up afterwards. Well, take it because I thought that was fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Well, I just, you think about it and you're trying to figure out, okay, so Svechnikov is you could argue fire with Connor, with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois early on in the season. And then he falls out of favor, right? So, I know he's liked by his teammates. He's one of the most outgoing guys in the locker room. So that is an issue. Sometimes, players, kind of share their stuff behind closed doors. But the reality is you had a guy come in here, okay, in Adam Brooks, who was here for 48 hours in a crazy travel schedule, getting just tossed in to that position. And so I asked Dave Lowry, I said, look, I see he's with Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, but is he in the doghouse or something or whatever? And he just looks at me and goes, where is he playing? And I go, top minutes. He goes, well, yes, he's got a chance now. But he kind of ignored the whole fact that this guy has been an available piece. Now, I'm not saying that Evgeny Svechnikov has played lights out or that he's necessarily been deserving, but you'd have to think, where else would he be residing in if it isn't the doghouse when you have a guy like Adam Brooks come in and instantly become your answer for that second line? It's ridiculous. Fascinating comments. I think Svechnikov has matured from the days when he was in Detroit. He went through, I want to say similar because I don't know the details of the specific details of either situation, but he's older now. I think he appreciates, but I think, he's a guy that likes to have fun. And when you ask him questions, he ain't having fun, but that's kind of a theme for all the players. As for Ville Heinola,
Hey, one quick one. I want to weigh in quickly too.
Go ahead.
This was so important to me that I phoned Jeff on scene today. So I'm going to say I'm going to echo a lot of the same things that he said. But to me, I mean, one of the things Dave Lowry is fond of saying to us is that you should be watching practice and watching the game. So when a player goes from being on the top line to seeing his minutes reduced from 12, 10, 8, 6, 3, and then as a healthy scratch.
And then you go out and talk about player story, King, but then he goes out and says, he didn't have to say it. He went out and said that Evgeny Svechnikov was a healthy scratch. Mm-hmm. Dave Lowry, when you know, like, he didn't have to call him a healthy scratch. He listed him. Anyway, go on.
No. And so if you see someone's ice time reduced, that there is no other conclusion to draw other than he's fallen out of favor. And doghouse, he might not like the word, because Dave's a positive guy, but I mean, there's no other way to describe how a player goes from 14 minutes a game to 3 and then is a healthy scratch on a team that is begging mercifully for secondary scoring. So I agree. I've said this before, even when it was going great. I mean, Svechnikov is a nice complementary piece. At his very best, he was still a nice complementary piece, but you know, much like Cole Perfetti after him, the offensive production was not at that highest level. So, but that's neither here nor there. The fact that he kind of fell out of the equation and then all of a sudden wasn't even considered to be a factor, I mean, that is worth exploring. And that's okay if the coach doesn't want to answer. But to think that that's not one of the questions that's surrounding the team, to me was quite a bizarre turn of events. But again, you know, Dave likes to focus on the positive. His positive today was Svechnikov is back on the top line. And I think he was fine, but I mean, he didn't have a humongous impact on the game either. I think he's good along the boards, but my biggest beef...
he is playing with that bum Pierre-Luc Dubois, Sean? I mean...
Exactly.
You know, like, how is he supposed to get points?
I was going to end the show by saying, hey, just so everyone knows, it's okay that Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't contribute offensively as long as he tries hard, ladies and gentlemen, right as the team misses the playoffs. I wanted to jump in on this. This is one reason I absolutely love the truth serum.
One quick thing. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want you to get... You do. You need to get this out of your system. So if you want to say it a few more times to help yourself feel better, please get it out today, because we're not going to go back into it on Friday.
Well, we will.
I've never seen Kenny so angry.
Not putting points up. I wanted to go into this. This is why I love the truth serum. Jeff, you shot a dart and gave a little bit of the truth serum. I thought that was really revealing. Dave Lowry's commentary, where he kind of talked about like the standard that, you know, players have to achieve. You know, there was a little bit of a telling there that the Jets don't think, and I think that would go right back to Paul Maurice, that Evgeny Svechnikov has been doing the things they expect him to do to succeed. I love that. I absolutely love that we're hearing that, because, you know, like, don't hide it from us. If this is happening, it's okay to talk about these things. My issue with that is it feels like there's a bit of a double standard to play here, right? Because we've had the conversations about the phantom plays by Mark Scheifele down the stretch, and that some of the top players on the team have not been doing the right things at the right moments. And if you're going to hold Evgeny Svechnikov to account for this, where is the top players on this team being held to account? And this comes back to, you know, Ken, this comes back to exactly what we talked about when Dave Lowry took over. Is I think there was a feeling with Paul Maurice that he never got to that, right? That there was different tiers of players on the team, and some tiers on the team were untouchable, and other players would wear their mistakes over and over and over again. And I mean, like we've talked about it in the past, how often does Nikolai Ehlers, how often is it talked about the things that he's not doing when he's not doing things right? It happens all the time, but we don't have that same thing happen when Blake Wheeler hasn't done things right. You know, no one is going to stand up today and say Blake Wheeler shouldn't have taken that penalty coming out of that Winnipeg Jets roster, when it's clear that is just a play that a player of that caliber and a player of that vintage shouldn't be making at that time. But this is why I love the truth serum. This would be one reason why the coaches don't love the truth serum, because to me, I hear that, and I hear Evgeny Svechnikov has not achieve the standard we expect from him, and there's been a punishment factor involved in that, or maybe not a punishment factor, but a removal of opportunities that maybe he's not earning. I'm wondering about the removal of opportunities for other players who have been achieving the standard that clearly the Jets have not been hitting at a number of times throughout this season.
No, part of the problem, they've had a revolving door at several positions that haven't been filled, Sean. So it's hard to continue to. It's a lot easier to do that with a player like Svechnikov, who's barely had a year of NHL experience, right? I mean, that would be my.
I'm not.
Well,
shaking
I mean,
your head
I don't think anyone's denying the fact that there's a hierarchy on NHL teams. I mean, and not everyone, and I don't know if you can. Like the fact of the matter is, the head coach has to be as much of a therapist as he is a a salesman and all these other things as he is a head coach. I mean, you can't treat Blake Wheeler the same way as you can treat Evgeny Svechnikov.
I think there's a number of coaches in the NHL who would entirely disagree with you.
Oh, I just no.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I think that I'm not. Again,
I don't disagree with you, Jeff.
That statement doesn't suggest that you need to put on kitty gloves with 26 versus Svechnikov. I'm just saying you need to treat different players differently. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of it depends on your influence within the team, your influence within the locker room. The numbers on your paycheck, let's be honest here. And so you think that if Blake Wheeler was making the Evgeny Svechnikov money and was taking multiple penalties in a game, including one on a power play, that he isn't getting his ass stapled to the bench, you're kidding yourself. But the reality is, and again, not excusing it, because I agree with you. I think there are some coaches out there that wouldn't necessarily treat players exactly the same, but would be maybe harder than the way that the coaching staff for the Jets has been on their top end players. But it doesn't surprise me at all to see a difference in treatment. We haven't got to Ville Heinola yet, though.
And we will right now.
While we're here, get at it. Or Ken, you got stuff to do, right?
No, I'm gonna have to write soon, and I think there's
let's go. Sorry, fine. We're just
no. It's a big no. Heinola. It's topical today.
All right, do your thing.
Jeff, you go ahead. I'll follow.
So, the reality is, and I know people aren't going to like it, Ville Heinola is going to stay with the Moose until the Jets get injured or are out of the playoffs. That to me was the biggest takeaway. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm not the one who makes the decisions. No one would listen to me anyways. But what I heard come out of Dave Lowry's mouth this morning, was that when this lineup is healthy, that includes Nathan Beaulieu, that includes Logan Stanley, that Ville Heinola is not part of the starting six. And Ville Heinola, as we all can agree, whether I think he should be, he's only 20, but I think he should be in the lineup, continue to develop. However, I just what we saw today is this guy's not getting in the lineup unless he's injured. The other thing too is I think where that decision comes from, and it was a similar situation with Paul Maurice, is that I don't want to harp on that Philadelphia game, but I think there's a lack of trust between the coaching staff and Ville Heinola. I think that they are not in a position. They fear that some of his decision making could cost them, and it's because of that lack of trust that you have guys like Nathan Beaulieu and Logan Stanley ahead of him. And I almost would argue, I don't know if you guys are there, I think Sandberg is ahead of him. So when he's healthy.
Agreed.
And again, don't shoot the messenger. Just saying this is what the Jets are thinking, is that it became, I think, more clear than it's ever been. Because, Ville would, hover around, be on the practice roster, get into games, whatever. I think that there's that lack of trust, and that, again, if this team does fall out of playoff contention, I think you're going to see the young guys get a lot of time. But until that happens, I don't think Ville Heinola is being viewed from the Jets staff as a solution to a desperate push to the playoffs.
I would say this. I would add that, Dave Lowry did go out of his way to praise Heinola for the strides he's taken, and those strides have been evident. I think in that that was not just Dave Lowry blowing smoke for the sake of saying this is one of our prospects, we need to make him feel good about himself. I think that Ville Heinola obviously took some strides forward. We know it was a tough situation for him to come back into the lineup against, by the way, the Florida Panthers when you haven't played for 3 weeks. That was not going to be easy for anyone. He was better against Vancouver, and then he got better for the conceivable future. I mean, there were some mistakes. There are going to be mistakes with young players. There are mistakes with veteran players. But Ville Heinola has a skill set that the Jets struggle with right now. There are warts and faults in his game, but in terms of exits, he's one of the best players at exits. But one point that I would like to reinforce, and I understand that it is not for the crowd that wants him to be playing immediately and says he's deserving. Being in the minors at 20 years old for part of the season does not kill a player. No. It does not. I mean, it may hurt their confidence briefly. And again, Oliver Shillington was a guy who was placed on waivers last year by the Calgary Flames. He is currently on their second pairing of the first place team in the Pacific Division. So everyone making the direct path to in Monopoly to do not collect $200 between Heinola and Sammy Niku, that is a wake up situation. We're nowhere near a Sammy Niku situation. That's not to say that Ville Heinola is happy. And like you said, Jeff, to Dave Lowry, no player going from the chartered plane and the Ritz-Carlton that ends up on a bus on a 3-and-3 is happy based on the number of zeros on his paycheck. And you don't want them to be happy. That's part of what makes a player competitive and what's parts of making him get back to the NHL. But it's not a race, like Dave Lowry pointed out. And you know why Dave Lowry knows it's not a race? Because at the age of 34 or 35 years old, and when he was just removed as captain of the Calgary Flames, Dave Lowry was sent to the St. John Flames of the American Hockey League. You know what would have been easy for Dave Lowry? To quit hockey or to not report to St. John. But what Dave Lowry did was go to St. John, play well enough to get back with the Calgary Flames, and then go to the Stanley Cup final the year after.
So, yeah, but you know what? At the same time, though, Kenny, like what was Dave Lowry drafted as? I think he viewed his NHL career as a dream. He was like 100 and something.
No, I understand what you're saying. No, what I'm saying, Jeff, is that he saw prospects like Ville Heinola when he went down to the minors, and those guys were wondering, when the hell am I getting called up to be a regular? So if a guy who's played 1,000 games can go down and work his ass off, I think it's okay for an 8, 19, or 20-year-old to wait another month or two before it's time. And don't get me wrong, I want to see more of Ville Heinola. I think that Ville Heinola can help the Jets right now. I totally think that. I think there are going to be moments where there are some struggles. There are also going to be moments where he's incredibly impactful on the game at a positive level. So before the year is over, we're going to see him, and that'll tee up another one of our discussions for another time when we're not going deep into the night. But the Jets are going to need to trade at least one of their veteran defensemen, because at least two of them, of the young prospects, are ready to play full-time right now.
Well, as David said in the comments section, I mean, and it kind of circles back to what we were talking about, accountability for, how much accountability do you put on certain players? Neil Pionk bobbles the puck today. You know what I mean? Stands back in a tone. Kyle Connor gives up the game, coughs up the game.
Yeah.
And, those guys aren't getting their asses stapled to the bench or sent down. Obviously, they're not getting sent to the Moose, but it's just, like Nate Schmidt. You know what I mean? Like, he's had some rough outings. Logan Stanley had a horrible game against Calgary. You know what I mean? Like, how do we, at the end of the day, I mean, why is there a lack of trust in one guy who, you can argue, yeah, he's not the most physical guy. Obviously, he's not going to be muscling anybody off in the corner, but he's one of the best puck handlers on this defensive team. This team is a transition team with speed. He's the kind of guy that you would like to complement those things with. But maybe it's because, they can't afford, or that lack of trust just adds or compounds to the rest of the issues on the blue line that Dave Lowry sees. I don't know, but it's just, to me, I was surprised to see a guy like, and I get that, like, the guys like, Beaulieu and that he's, he can kill penalties and he can step in front of pucks and all those things. But I mean, come on, man. Like, I mean, this is he's 20 years old. He's killed it at the AHL level. He's you need to put him into this and watch him go. I mean, you watch other teams put these guys in, like the Jets were, and this is the other part. When you have a confident team, when you have players, like, can you imagine putting a jersey on in the Colorado Avalanche dressing room as a 20-year-old defenseman? That you're Ville Heinola, if he walked into that dressing room, the guy would feel like he's 6'5", because of the confidence and the juices brewing in the dressing room. I don't even, step into the Jets where everyone's miserable and they're not having any fun. That's a tough spot to develop in too. So that's just an added wrinkle, I think, to this whole situation.
I could add I don't think I need to. You guys handle that great. Gotta say, $1.45 close to we went tonight.
Sorry,
That's a good
guys.
one. It's been a long time since we did that, but I gotta say, there's no place I rather would have been than hacking it out with you guys here tonight. There was a good one here tonight. Once again, our chat room entirely engaged, gave us some
Love
great
the
stuff.
chat room, killing it.
And boy, oh boy, you stuck with us. Someone pointed out really high numbers right until the end of the show. That's phenomenal stuff. So just want to say, reminder again, if you want to get some Kenny and Renny merch, head to the Sportsnet shop. Other than that, if you like what you see, make sure you click like. If you haven't
And subscribe.
Get with the program here. Start subscribing as well, because we'll be at this. And you know what? It's funny because a lot of the conversations we had, we're going to be diving into, right? Because the stuff having to do with coaching heading into next season, Kevin Cheveldayoff, Mark Chibin, all the stuff that we talked about here tonight, that is going to become bigger and bigger and bigger topics as the season goes on here. Never mind the fact that the trade deadline is starting to become pretty prominent. Ken, I loved your answer. I love that you're taking no prisoners on it. You're already there. I still think we're about a week away from the Jets making any kind of decision on what they're going to do. That said, I think that time is coming, and it's coming very quick. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hammy, appreciate your time. If you can get out for that slider, make sure you do it. There's also a place where you can go get, I haven't tried it yet, you can get pig's face tacos, where they bring you half the head of a boar and you like break away the cheek meat, and it's supposed to be.
I want to fall asleep tonight. Okay?
It's right downtown. Anyway, if you got the courage to do it, or you could just wait till I go and I'll hold your hand while we go in there. We'll do it.
Please, thank you. Okay? Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Hammy, thanks for joining us. Great job, Kenny. Awesome as usual.
Always a pleasure, guys.
Enjoy. Hopefully the weather turns around. You guys can tell me about your golf game in the next coming days. Other than that, we will see everybody on Friday.